Color guard, attention. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, post the colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2.
Color guard, about face. Color guard, return to ranks.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, words of gallantry streaming, and the rockets spread by, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good morning. My name is Chuck McFadden. I'm the high school social studies teacher here at Clearwater High School and former student council sponsor. The last several years I've had the opportunity to speak to you veterans, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity this year as well. I'd like to welcome you to the 2020 Clearwater R1 Virtual Veterans Day Assembly. I want to begin by thanking Mrs. Hand and the rest of the Clearwater administration for working with us to make this video possible. I would like to thank Mrs. Johnson and the ProStart students for preparing breakfast for the veterans. I would like to thank Mrs. McClintock, the new high school band and choir director, for their contributions that will be presented later in this video. I would like to recognize Mrs. Banger for organizing and producing this video and more or less doing everything behind the scenes to get us ready. I would like to thank also Sydney McLean, Ty Sylvester, Zoe Stevens, Lainey Briley, Ayla Keller, and Noah Graham for their additions to this video that you will see later. Thank you to all the teachers and the students who worked hard to create this video to honor our veterans. And lastly, I would like to give a huge shout out to Mrs. V, the new high school student council sponsor. She took on the role of organizing this event in the midst of a global pandemic. And I believe that she has done a great job organizing this event, and she has worked very hard. I'd also like to say thank you to her for allowing me to continue to speak to my heroes, the veterans. Thank you all for your service and for your sacrifice. This year, we've been dealt a difficult hand, and this ceremony may be different, but we have all done our best to honor you. So in the midst of these troubling times, we remember those that have laid their lives on the line and those who worried that they would never come home. It is disheartening for me not to be in your presence today. However, we as a school and as a community want you to know that we are thankful for all that you have done. Today, we would like to honor you in all that you have done for us, because today we are free. Free to take out time from an otherwise ordinary day. Like so many others across our great nation, today is our opportunity to honor you, brave benefactors of freedom. From Bunker Hill to Baghdad, there has always been a select group of Americans willing to fight and possibly die for a cause greater than their own self-preservation. And while we set aside November 11th as a special day to honor and remember our veterans, we should, as a community, continuously endeavor to serve our veterans as well as they have served our nation, with pride, purpose, and enthusiasm. I personally have never worn a uniform. I've never been to war, been wounded or scared in battle. I've never left my family for months or years to travel across this world to fight for and possibly defend my country. I have no idea what any of you have experienced, your fear, your bravery, your suffering, or your survival. And so I stand here today as a humble citizen, and I represent grateful citizens who do not have the honors of speaking to their heroes on Veterans Day. I represent grateful Americans who wish they could reach out and thank you, each of you personally. We as citizens of the greatest country of all times must remember to honor all of you and your families, not just with annual ceremonies, but with compassionate hearts. PTSD, brain injury, life-altering war wounds not only affect veterans, but also take enormous impacts on the family as well. It is our duty to do our part. It's tragic that men and women who allow us to be safe in our own homes are often without homes themselves when they no longer wear the uniform. According to United States Census data, 1 in 4 of America's homeless population is a veteran. 9 out of 10 were honorably discharged, and nearly half serving during the Vietnam War. Too often, today's tattered citizen of the street was yesterday's toast of the town in a crisp uniform with rows of shining medals. This is hardly the thanks of a grateful nation. Ceremonies like this are important, but our gratitude must be expressed more than once a year. We must honor these men and women by living well. We must always remember that each veteran represents an oath taken that included a willingness to die for this country if called upon. That's what President Lincoln characterized as the last full measure of devotion. I speak of my grandpa every year, Private First Class William Bill Shelton, Clearwater graduate, and I will continue to honor his legacy by talking about him every year that I have the honor to stand in front of great men and women like him. My grandpa served in Korea, often called the Forgotten War. This is such a terrible travesty. Believe me, the physical, mental, and emotional scars my grandpa had to live with for his entire life made it anything but forgotten. But far too often as a society, it has become easy for us to move on from one topic to the next. So if you hear nothing else that I say here today, hear this. I urge you to stop, take a moment, and thank these men and women for their trials that they have faced and continue to face in the name of your freedoms. When my grandpa was deployed, he was just a young man in his early 20s, bright, ambitious, some could say a little ornery. He answered the call of duty on his nation's time of need. He never thought twice. He enlisted, married my grandma, and left for basic training. He disembarked on a journey where he did not know the outcome. He was only actually in country for a couple of months before at the Battle of Heartbreak Ridge, the foxhole that my grandpa was defending was struck by an artillery shell. He was hit in the face by shrapnel from the explosive. He was maimed so badly that his fellow soldiers believed that he was dead, or nearly dead. He was collected from the front and sent from hospital to hospital on a marathon cycle of surgery and recovery that lasted longer than his actual deployment. When he was finally discharged, he was sent home to endure a lifetime of emotional, physical, and psychological pain. As a young boy, I would go to my grandpa's house, and I could see his physical scars. I could witness his emotional scars and psychological scars, most notably on the 4th of July, when most Americans are out celebrating liberty of this great country. With every boom of a firecracker, my grandpa was reminded of that foxhole, where he nearly felt the cost of liberty and our freedom that we often take for granted. Sometimes I'd ask my grandpa a question. I pondered this question several times. I asked him, "Do you ever regret joining the Army and fighting in Korea?" He always responded the same way. He would take a moment. He would look at me with a look that only my grandpa could give me. And he always replied, "No. I went then, and I would go now." He served because he believed that he was serving so others did not have to. He was willing to lay down his life for duty to this country so that others wouldn't. And I believe that if I surveyed the veterans who are seeing this video, I would get a similar response. With their extraordinary service comes our extraordinary debt. And for their service and their dedication, we must always be grateful. So students, people of this community, all of you viewing this video, I challenge you, do not let another moment pass that you do not do everything within your power to ensure that every veteran who has served and sacrificed for this great nation feels appreciated and valued. John F. Kennedy said, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. So it isn't enough just to say it. We need to be it. Be grateful. Be thankful. Be appreciative. The greatest prayer of thanks you can say is thank you. 2 words, 8 letters. But weighted with love, gratitude, humility, and understanding. As each day passes, we move farther and further away from these wars. More heroes pass, and time pushes in new headlines. Life gets in the way of the past, and we move through our own days, months, and years. In closing, I would like to share this passage from Ronald Reagan from a speech that he gave honoring the Vietnam War veterans in 1988. He said, "For far too long a time they stood in a chill wind, as if on a winter's night watch. And that night their deeds spoke to us, but we knew them not. Their voices called to us, but we heard them not. Yet in this land that God has blessed, the dawn at last follows the dark. And now morning has come, and the night is over. We see these men, and we know them once again, and know how much we owe them, how much they have given us, and how much we can never fully repay. And it's not just as individuals, but as a nation, we say, we love you and thank you. God bless you all, God bless our veterans, and God bless the United States of America."
Representation of each conflict and battle allows us to honor and cherish those who have served. In every fight, these brave men and women were serving the same thing, us. We are here today to honor those people who have given up so much of their lives for us. Today we look back on what you have done and realize just how much you have sacrificed. World War II, 1939 to 1945. The instability created in Europe by the First World War set the stage for another international conflict, which broke out 2 decades later and would prove even more devastating. Rising to power in an economically and politically unstable Germany, Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazi Party, rearmed the nation and signed strategic treaties with Italy and Japan to further his ambitions of world domination. Hitler's invasion of Poland in September 1939 drove Great Britain and France to declare war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. Over the next 6 years, the conflict would take more lives and destroy more land and property around the globe than any previous war. World War II proved to be the deadliest international conflict in history, taking the lives of 60 to 80 million people, including 6 million Jews who died at the hands of Nazis during the Holocaust. Civilians made up an estimated 50 to 55 million deaths from the war, while the military comprised 21 to 25 million of those lost during the war. Millions more were injured, and still more lost their homes and property. The Axis powers attempted to dominate the world. The Allies fought to stop them. The United States entered the war in 1941, after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. Germany surrendered in 1945, and Japan surrendered later that same year.
The Korean War, 1950 through 1953. The Korean War began on June 25, 1950, when some 75,000 soldiers from the North Korean People's Army poured across the 38th parallel, the boundary between the Soviet-backed Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the north and pro-Western Republic of Korea to the south. This invasion was the first military action of the Cold War. By July, American troops had entered the war on South Korea's behalf. As far as American officials were concerned, it was a war against the forces of international communism itself. After some early back and forth across the 38th parallel, the fighting stalled and casualties mounted with nothing to show for them. Meanwhile, American officials worked anxiously to fashion some sort of armistice with North Koreans. The alternative they feared would be a wider war with Russia and China, or even, as some warned, World War III. Finally, in July 1953, the Korean War came to an end. In all, some 5 million soldiers and civilians lost their lives in what many in the U.S. refer to as the Forgotten War, for the lack of attention it received compared to more well-known conflicts like World War I and II and the Vietnam War. The Korean Peninsula is still divided today. The Korean War was relatively short but exceptionally bloody. Today, they are remembered at the Korean War Veterans Memorial near the Lincoln Memorial on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., as a series of 19 steel statues of servicemen.
The Vietnam War, 1961 to 1973. The Vietnam War was a long, costly, and divisive conflict that pitted the communist government of North Vietnam against South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. The conflict was intensified by the ongoing Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. More than 3 million people, including over 58,000 Americans, were killed during the Vietnam War, and more than half of the dead were Vietnamese citizens. Opposition to the war in the United States bitterly divided the Americans. Even after President Richard Nixon ordered the withdrawals of U.S. forces in 1973, Communist forces ended the war by seizing control of South Vietnam in 1975, and the country was unified as a Socialist Republic of Vietnam the following year.
The Gulf War, 1991. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein ordered the invasion and occupation of neighboring Kuwait in early August 1990. Alarmed by these actions, fellow Arab powers such as Saudi Arabia and Egypt called on the United States and other Western nations to intervene. Hussein defied the United Nations Security Council demands to withdraw from Kuwait by mid-January 1991, and the Persian Gulf War began with a massive U.S.-led air offensive known as Operation Desert Storm. After 42 days of relentless attacks by the Allied coalition in the air and on the ground, U.S. President George H.W. Bush declared a ceasefire on February 28. By that time, most Iraqi forces in Kuwait had either surrendered or fled. Though the Persian Gulf War was initially considered an unqualified success for the international coalition, simmering conflict in the troubled region led to a second Gulf War, known as the Iraq War, that began in 2003.
The War in Afghanistan, 2001 through 2014. The Afghanistan War was an international conflict in Afghanistan beginning in 2001 that was triggered by the September 11 attacks and consisted of 3 phases. The first phase, toppling the Taliban, was brief, lasting just 2 months. The second phase, from 2002 until 2008, was marked by a U.S. strategy of defeating the Taliban military and rebuilding core institutions of the Afghan state. The third phase, a turn to classic counterinsurgency doctrine, began in 2008 and accelerated with U.S. President Barack Obama's 2009 decision to temporarily increase the U.S. troops' presence in Afghanistan. The larger force was used to implement a strategy of protecting the population from Taliban attacks and supporting efforts to reintegrate insurgents into Afghan society. The strategy was coupled with a timetable for the withdrawal of the foreign forces from Afghanistan, beginning in 2011. Security responsibilities would be gradually handed over to the Afghan military and police. Insurgent attacks and civilian casualties remained stubbornly high, while many of the Afghan military and police units taking over security duties appeared to be ill-prepared to hold off the Taliban. By the time the U.S. and NATO combat mission formally ended in December 2014, the 13-year Afghanistan war had become the longest war ever fought by the United States.
The War in Iraq, 2003 to 2010. The United States, along with Great Britain and a small contingent of troops from other nations, invaded Iraq in March 2003. Within a few months, Operation Iraqi Freedom captured Baghdad and other major cities, and Saddam Hussein's government was overthrown. President Bush declared the end to a major combat operations on May 1, 2003, but peace was to prove harder to win than the war. Progress was also slow in the political front. Despite positive developments, the insurgency intensified. Foreign fighters associated with al-Qaeda in Iraq and growing sectarian violence between the Shiites and the Sunnis brought American casualties to over 3,000.
Peacetime. We'd like to recognize those who served during peacetime, as well as any active duty or reserve personnel. We thank all veterans for their service and sacrifice. We can never truly repay you for what you have done, but we will try to give you the honor that you deserve.
A sad part of military etiquette is honoring service members who have fallen in the light of duty. Remembering them honors their sacrifice and that of their families. It also underscores the importance of the commitment to duty made by the living. One beautiful and thoughtful way to honor those who have died is a fallen soldier table. Each element on the table symbolizes something specific. Table. A table set for one is small, symbolizing the frailty of one isolated prisoner. The table is round, to represent everlasting concern on the part of their survivors for their missing loved ones. The tablecloth. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. A single rose. A single rose in a vase signifies the blood that many have shed and sacrificed to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose also reminds us of our beloved family and friends or missing comrades who keep the faith while awaiting their return. Yellow ribbon. The yellow ribbon represents the yellow ribbon worn on the lapels of thousands who demand with unyielding determination a proper accounting of our comrades who are not among us tonight. A slice of lemon. The slice of lemon on our bread plate symbolizes the bitter fate of the missing. Salt. The salt sprinkled on the bread plate symbolizes the countless fallen tears of families as they wait. Inverted glass. This glass inverted on the table represents the fact that the missing and fallen cannot partake of the food and drink set at the table. The Bible. The Bible represents the spiritual strength and faith to sustain those lost from our country. A lit candle. The lit candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home away from their captors to open arms of a grateful nation. Empty chair. The empty chair represents the missing and fallen that aren't present.
Thank you, veterans!
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Hey, Miss Tina's class, say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, veterans, for all you do.
Thank you, veterans.
Mrs. Keller's group, thank you, veterans.
Happy Veterans Day! Thank you,
Thank you, veterans. Yeah.
Happy Veterans Day! Thank you for your service.
This is Mr. Long's class, 6th grade, and we are from Piedmont, Missouri, Clearwater Tigers. A veteran is someone who served in the armed forces. Army by land, Navy by water, Air Force by air, Marines by air, land, and water. Armistice Day was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month at 11 o'clock, November 11th. It became Veterans Day in 1954.
Veterans Day, November 11th. Veterans Day is a holiday to remember those who have served and are serving in the military. Who is a veteran? A person who has fought for our country in the Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard. What do? Protect our country, fight for our freedom. We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, all thanks to our veterans and the service they gave.
Thank you, veterans.
Hey guys, this is Miss Barry's 6th grade class. And who do we want to thank?
The veterans.
Good job. Thank you for all your service that you've done for this great America that we live in. How many of you have veterans in your family? Thank those people and give them a hug whenever you see them, okay? All right. They made this American flag for you all and this great poster, and one of our students is going to read it. Go ahead.
We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, thanks to the veterans and the service they gave.
All right, great job. And we can't have a regular assembly, but we are going to make the best of this. And so do you guys have one more thing that you want to tell all of the veterans? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
USA! 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 USA!
Veterans, for everything you've done. And this is Mrs. Shear's advisory class, and my students have something to say to you, and here it is.
Thank you, veterans.
Thank you.
Happy Veterans Day 2020. My name is Mrs. Roach, Peggy Roach, and I teach 7th and 8th grade at Clearwater Middle School. I have standing behind me 2 young men from our advisory. Landon is bearing the flag, and Braden is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I just want you to know that our advisory appreciates everything that you have done for us. We know that many of the freedoms that we have are because you sacrificed and gave of your time to our country. So for that, we thank you. Whether you served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard, during times of war or times of peace, we appreciate everything that you've done for us, and we pray that you are continue to be blessed, and we want you to know that we do appreciate everything you've done. I have a few students that would like to say a few words.
I'm Skylar, and I just want to thank you guys for your service.
I am Kylan, and I just want to thank you guys for what you did for our country.
I'm Brooklyn, and I would like to thank you for what you've done.
I'm Melissa, and I want to thank you for all of your work to save our country.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I'd like to thank you for your service.
As you can see, we do appreciate everything you've done for us. We hope you have a great day, and hopefully next year we'll all be able to be together.
Thank you for your service.
Color guard, attention. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, retrieve to colors. Color guard, about face. Color guard, return to ranks.